Alright, this is Mr. Gillum, and today we're going to learn about some triangle relationships between their sides and their opposite angles. So let's start off with some angles. It says given the two angle measures, find the measure of the third angle of the given triangle. Alright, so let's use some of our prior knowledge of the things we know about triangles. And one of the things is we know that all triangles add up to 180 degrees. So if I start with my total of 180 and I take away the parts that I already have, my 75, and I also take away the 25 degrees, whatever's left will be the number of degrees that has to be left for the last angle. So 180 minus 75 is 105 minus 25. I'm going to say that is 80. So therefore the last angle should be 80 degrees. Okay, that's a good way of thinking of how to find the missing angle, but I want to start learning how to apply algebra to find missing parts. So instead of just taking away the parts we know and whatever's left of the last angle, let's set up an equation here. I know that the three angles add to 180. So what I'm going to say is angle 1 plus angle 2 plus angle 3 equals 180. I know that angle 1 is 25, angle 2 is 75, and I don't know the third angle, so I'm going to use a variable there for x. And so now what I'm doing is I'm incorporating algebra with my geometry. So we're going to say 100 plus x equals 180. And so I know that x must equal 80. So 80 degrees. All right. It's good to think about it this way to make sure your answer makes sense, but today we're using algebra to figure out our missing angles. So let's take a look at another example here, and it says now we have a 14-degree angle, a 92-degree angle, and we're listing the third angle measure. So again, what I could do is take 180, take away the 14 and the 92, and whatever's left, that must be the last measure of the degree. Or I could set up an equation algebraically. I know there's three angles in a triangle, and the sum of their measures has to equal 180 degrees. I'm going to say 14 plus 92 plus something must equal 180. So now I'm just going to use my combining like terms, 106 plus x equals 180, and then solving for my variable or getting it by itself on one side of the equal sign, everything else on the other, leaves me with 74 degrees. So I would say that my third angle must be 74 degrees. Okay, so just keep in mind all the angles have to add up to 180 degrees for a triangle. All right. Now we're going to talk about just some logistics as far as naming angles and naming sides. Okay, so since we're dealing with triangles, there's three different angles here. I'm just going to list them in alphabetical order. We have angle A, angle B, and angle C. All right, and what I would like to do is identify the opposite sides. When it says opposite side, I'm going to actually go to this little arc that I made on A, and I'm going to draw an arrow straight across, and that's the opposite side. In this case, we would call it little a. Little a is opposite of angle A. Or I could even say that's the same thing as the segment CB. Okay, you could call it CB as well. That would be acceptable. They're not always labeled with little letters across, and we're going to find that out here in a second. Across from opposite angle B would be little b, or we could call that segment AC, or we could even call it CA if we wanted to. And finally, opposite of angle C is little c. Or we could call it AB if we wanted to, or BA. Those are just segments. Okay. And so when I say opposite, I mean opposite. I mean, there's no other way to say it. Just the one straight across from the angle. Okay. Now there's a relationship between angle measures and their opposite sides as well. All right. Across from the smaller opposite of the smallest angle is the smallest side. And across opposite the biggest or largest angle is the largest or biggest side. Biggest side. Okay. So if I know these degrees in here, I can put them in order. This is the smallest, the second smallest, and finally the largest. Opposite of the smallest angle is the smallest side. So if I'm looking at the smallest angle, 51 degrees, opposite of that would be side AB. he would be the smallest, or I could even put BA if I wanted to. Either way would be fine, any order. The second biggest angle is this guy right here, 54. So across from him would be the second biggest side. We'll call him BC, or we could call him CB if we wanted to. And finally, the largest angle across from him would be the largest side. So we'll call him AC, or we could even call him CA. It doesn't matter which way you write it. But if I were to list these sides in order from smallest to greatest, from smallest to greatest, I could tell by looking at the angle measures. Across from the smallest is the smallest side, and so on. Okay, it's going to be really hard to tell just by looking at the diagram here which of these sides is smaller, but I know if I know the angles, I can tell which sides are smaller. Okay, it says list both the angles and sides in order from least to greatest. All right, so we got a little arithmetic to do here. Before I can do anything, I need to figure out what the measure of this angle is. So I'm going to use my algebra. I'm going to say, okay, well, 83 plus 62 plus something has to equal 180 degrees. So 145 plus something. And if I solve for it, I know that it must equal 35. So I know that this is 35 degrees. So I'm going to write that in there. And I'm going to start by saying angle C is the smallest. Angle A is the second smallest, and angle B is the largest. So we're going from least to greatest. I'm just doing that by looking at the angle measure. So I had to figure out what this angle measure was before I could list my sides in order, or my angles in order. Now, opposite of C is AB, so it must be the smallest side. Opposite of A is BC. Oops, I put two commas in there. And opposite of B was AC. Okay? And so once you know the angles, you can quickly find the sides. But it works the same in the opposite direction. If I had the sides, I could tell which angles were the smallest. So there's my sides and my angles in order. Notice how I didn't write the degrees in there. I wrote the angle that I was referring to in there. Okay, so again, let's take a look at another one here. I need to know what this angle is before I can do anything as far as ordering them from least to greatest. So I'm going to use algebra again. 48 plus 87 plus something must equal 180 degrees total. 135 plus something should equal 180. And so I know that x in this case must equal 45 degrees. I'm going to call that guy 45 degrees. All right, so now it's going to be really hard to tell which of these sides was actually longer than the other, but now since I know the angle measures, I can tell. So I'm going to start with the angle measures. I'm going to say angle V is the smallest with 45. Angle D is the second smallest, 48, and angle E is the largest with 87. Opposite of each of those angles is the smallest side in that order. So opposite of V is DE. Opposite of D is, oops, sorry about that. There's a mistake. I don't know what opposite of V is first. Opposite of V is DE. Opposite of D is VE. And opposite of E is DV. Okay, so we just got to label them and put them in order, from least to greatest, depending on the angles. And we can do that opposite way as well with the sides. Okay, and now notice how it doesn't have any labels on here, so I'm just going to call this ABC. Let's label it ABC so we know which angles we're talking about. Now I'm going to start instead with the angles this time with the sides. I'm going to start with the smallest, 7, then 13, then 18. Okay, and this works the same exact way. The smallest angle is opposite the smallest side, so in this case, angle C would be the smallest angle. Then 13 is opposite to A. Angle A would be the second smallest, and the largest, the hypotenuse is what they call it, would be angle B. Okay, across from angle B. And so I'll do one more here for you, and let's call this one in different letters just so we can, let's call it D, E, F. And once again, since they give me the information of side lengths, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my side lengths. I'm going to say 5 is the smallest, 12 the second, and 13 is the largest. Opposite of 5 was this little angle right there, angle E. Opposite of 12 was angle F. and opposite of 13 was angle D. And so the sides and the angles have this relationship where opposite parts are corresponding. Finally, we have this little fella right here, and I think you're going to like these. It says find the value of x if it's a triangle, and put ABC in order from shortest to longest if the angles have the indicated measures. So it's a two-part question. First of all, what they give us here is 3 angle measures, and it tells us that it's a triangle. So I have an angle here, angle here, angle here. Now before, what we were doing was we were saying, oh, well, it has to add up to 180. Still, it has to add up to 180. So even though there's lots of variables in this one, I can still say that whatever this angle is, x plus 30, plus whatever this angle is, x minus 10, plus whatever this angle is, x plus 10, should equal 180 degrees when I'm all done. So if I can find the unknown, then I can find what these 3 angles are. So what I'm going to do is combine like terms. I have 3 x's and call him 3x. I have 30 minus 10 is 20, plus 10 is 30 again. Plus 30 equals 180. So I'm getting closer to solving for my unknown. Continue on. 3x equals 150. And when I divide by 3, it looks like x equals 50. That's really important, but we haven't actually answered the question yet. It says, I want the angles in order from shortest to longest, if the angles have the indicated measures. Now that I know that x is 50, what I can say is the measure of angle CAB would be 50 plus 30, which in this case would be 80. The measure of angle ABC will be equal to 50 minus 10, which is 40, and the measure of angle BCA will be equal to 50 plus 10, 60. If you add those angles up, you would get 180 degrees total. Those are my angles. This is my value, but again, I still haven't answered the question. I need from shortest to longest, so I'm going to start with, in order, measure angle ABC, measure angle BCA, and then measure angle CAB. From shortest to biggest. I'm just looking at these numbers right here. They're degrees. All right, that gives us just enough time for one more. Once again, it gives us these 3 angles, and it tells us we're making a triangle, so we know that all the sum of these angles should add up to 180 degrees. Ooh. Negative x plus 80 plus 2x minus 15 plus x plus 5 should all equal 180 degrees for my triangle. Now when I'm combining my like terms, we need to remind ourselves that the negative sign stays with the x. So I really have negative 1x plus 2x makes positive 1x, plus another x makes 2x total. Plus 80 minus 15, 65, plus 5, 70, equals 180. So now we have this equation. It's time to solve it. We're going to get that variable by itself. So x must equal 55. That's a good start, but I haven't answered the question yet. So I need to go back and I need to figure out what each of these angles is worth. So I'm going to say I have 3 angles. Measure angle CAB, measure angle ABC, and measure angle BCA. To find their actual measures, I'm going to take this 55 and I'm going to put it in. Negative 55 plus 80, that's going to be 25. So my first one's 25 degrees. My second one, when I put in a 55 here, it tells me 110 minus 15, 95 degrees. And finally, when I put my 55 in here, 55 plus 5 is 60. 60 degrees. Now it's just a matter of putting them in order, and I'm all done. I just need to make sure that I answer the question. That was for the last one up here. Okay, so I'm going to say, in order from smallest to largest would be measure angle CAB, measure angle BCA, and then finally measure angle ABC. All right. So make sure we're answering the question there. We got a lot of steps to these problems, but I know you can do it. I think that's it for today.